I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Dina, could you please call the roll?
Okay, Lisa Diaz-Nash.
Here.
Elizabeth DeWinter.
Here.
Don Hill.
Here.
Dr. Lester Chin.
Here.
And Rodlyn Harris.
Here.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now moving on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. If discussion is desired, then that item may be removed and considered separately. Is there any item that anyone on the board wishes to remove from the consent calendar?
I would like to ask a question that relates to the financial report for January and February.
Okay, so let's remove that from the consent calendar and then we can discuss it afterwards. Any other board member and any other item? No? Dina, is there anyone from the public who wants to remove anything from the consent calendar?
No.
No. Okay, great. Then could I ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item number 3?
So move.
I second.
Okay, so Don is making the motion and Lester is seconding it. Dina, could you please call roll?
Okay. Don Hill, what is your vote?
Aye.
Dr. Lester Chin, what is your vote?
Aye.
Lisa Diaz-Nash, what is your vote?
Aye.
Elizabeth DeWinter, what is your vote?
Aye.
And Rodlyn Harris, what is your vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So now let's have a discussion about the financial reports. And Don, you had a specific question about one of them.
I just have a simple question. There's a figure of 186,000 from the Frank Lanza Living Trust. And I guess I have 2 questions. One, what is that? And number 2, where does that money sit? Because I notice the amount doesn't change between January and February.
So what it is a gift from a deceased San Mateo resident who last year, just before the pandemic, the attorney for their estate contacted us and said that Mr. Lanza had left the library in his will as part of his estate. So when we received the money, we decided that we wanted to hold on to it and save it for hopefully a major project. So we've basically, it sits in a special account and it's just going to stay there. If you were to ask me right now, I would say that we are waiting for perhaps an opportunity to work on some aspect of the redesign plan for the main library. And we would like to hold on to it for, I guess, seed money. It's not enough really to cover any portion of that redesign, but we're waiting for an opportunity where we may be able to build upon it and use it towards some sort of aspect of the redesign or the upgrades for the main library. And so it's not going to change from month to month. In the past, some of these accounts have been held on to for years until the right opportunity arose to spend it.
So my part of my question is this: that's a significant amount of money.
Yes.
If it were in a bank account, it would earn interest in it. And what I maybe we just don't do that. But it seems I just want to know, why not? Why not earn interest on this in a bank account?
Mhm.
My question, I guess.
Sure, good question. Well, first of all, I wouldn't earn very much interest in a bank account these days, the way interest rates are continually being cut. But it could have definitely earned substantial money in the stock market this past year. And of course, it could have also lost it all. We just have limited control over it as far as the city goes. We are not able to put it in, we are not allowed to put it into any sort of interest-bearing account per city rules and guidelines. We're just able to set it aside. So that is a good question, and yeah, we're just not allowed to do that with it.
Now, is that that's none of our business, but is that true in general of city funds?
Well, I don't think it's not any of your business, because anything the city does with public funds is public information. And I would say in general, yes, because, well, first of all, we have a unique situation at the library. We're probably the only department that gets these sort of gifts from time to time. We're the only department that really has a really successful fundraising body in the form of the foundation. And there were recent, upgrades to the laws of surrounding carrying over funds, et cetera. And we have special provisions for us because we get these sort of gifts. But in general, I would say yes, that's a general finance rule. And I'm always willing to get you the specific information from our finance director. But in general, it's a general finance rule. I don't think that any city funds can be, other than those that are probably the pension funds, which are managed and based upon investments. Otherwise, I don't think any city funds can be put into interest-bearing accounts or any risky endeavors such as investments on the stock market or bond market. But of course, like I said, I would be glad to get you more specific information.
No, that's fine. I just didn't understand it. Now I do.
Yep. No problem.
I really wish you had invested the money in Tesla, but
we should have invested in GameStop.
No.
Bitcoin, Dogecoin.
There we go. So, Don, do you have any other questions?
no, that's it.
Does anyone else have any questions about the finance reports?
I have a question that's piggybacking that topic you were just discussing there.
Mm-hmm.
So if I understand correctly, so that is a policy of the city that monies cannot be invested of any type, and library is unique, as you say. I guess what I'm wondering is, you mentioned that money's sitting there and it's awaiting a project. Well, theoretically, what if the entity to which the money was given was not in a position for, an indefinite amount of time to use it? So money of that amount could just sit in a vacuum for a decade or 2 decades. That seems a bit, that doesn't seem to be in the best interest of the people of the city. I mean, is there anything we can look into to have it go into something?
I think Lynn may have something to say.
I think Lynn may have something to add.
If she unmutes herself.
Only if James doesn't have something he wants to add. I was just going to share that in my experience on the school board, there's a lot of state law around management of public funds. And so typically public entities like cities and districts like school districts have very defined places that they can place money. This, you may recall, a couple decades ago, all of the shenanigans that happened in Orange County around the financial crisis. So this is a highly regulated area. And I think the city does have funds that earn much less than market rates, but that is in the interest of preserving the risk, keeping it low so that we don't lose the capital or the principal. But I don't actually have specifics around what's permissible in this particular space. You know, this, by the way, the reason that you have the Lanza gift is that it was directed exactly to the library. There was some confusion initially with the trustee, or the beneficiaries, and the trustees originally notified the foundation that it was a gift. And it turns out that the documents just listed the library. They didn't list the library foundation. So that's why the check came directly to James. But this has happened in the past, but Ben had a couple of bequests as well.
Thanks, Lynn. So Rod, to answer your question, as far as I know, yes, I haven't had to look into the specifics of that question, but I know that, as Lynn noted, that there was at least one large bequest that was present when I came on board, and it sat and it, until Ben found opportunities to use it. I think maybe some of the money may have even been used to supplement the upgrading of the children's area. So I could get you the specific information and guidelines if you would like. I could follow up with our finance director, because I don't pretend to understand every single one of those rules, but it's counterintuitive. At the same time, as Lynn stated, there are very strict laws around public finance dictated from the state level, and it does mean a sacrifice of opportunities to earn, but it's mainly meant to protect, to, I guess, eliminate risk and to eliminate misconduct.
No, and that makes perfect sense. I would expect them, any stipulations about investing of money of that type, to be highly defined, which was the phrase Lynn used. That's exactly what I'd expect. I'm just a little surprised that there is no opportunity to put it in something that's extremely safe, but at least yields something. Because again, over time, there's a little bit of an opportunity cost there. You don't have to be speculative, but it's just kind of, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And of course, I'm always glad to follow up, because one of the things I've found is that at this stage in my career, and it probably will always be this way, but especially now, the things I follow up on give me information and insight that is useful for me moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you.
Lester, you have something to say.
Yeah, I wanted to perhaps, thank you, Trustee Diaz-Nash. I wonder if I could suggest a redirection. I mean, I feel fairly confident that Drew, especially coming from a finance background, like if there were a way, he would have done it, right? I mean, we've all heard the city council talk about unfunded pension liabilities. Like if there's juice that could be squeezed within the state guidelines, they would have found it. Instead of having James take it up with the new finance director, I mean, perhaps this is better, like for our partners at the foundation to discuss. Like they could time their gifts, like they could hold on to it and discuss whether they want to invest it, because that's while the foundation holds the money. I mean, Director Esselstyn, correct me if I'm wrong, right? But it's not subject to these like city and state provisions. Isn't that correct?
Only if we hold the money, but we don't hold the money in this case.
Right. So
it came directly to this. It came directly to the library. Yeah, and actually, that's part of my report. Is I was going to tell you, give you an update about the legacy fund, which is our big quasi endowment for the benefit of the library.
Right.
So I don't want to some news for that later, but
I don't want to steal your thunder. So, and I recognize the ship on this one has sailed, but perhaps. That's perhaps best left for the like these interest-bearing investment policies are perhaps best left to the foundation.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and the complicated factor is that if you give it to us, we exercise control over it, which means that it may not be available to you on demand, and that's one of the reasons that I think it's currently sitting is that there's you know, there may be a difference of opinion at any given moment between the two organizations. They may be pointed in the same direction with the ultimate same goal of benefiting the library, but they may have different strategies. So, you know, but I agree with you, Lester, that the people that will have this information are most likely city council members, and Drew. And I'm fairly confident that this is all regulated highly by state law. And you're correct that if Drew thought there was a way for us to be making money off of these things, he'd probably be doing it. But I don't think that's legal.
And no, I was not wondering about Drew's ability to find places to invest it. I guess I'm more surprised at the concept that something like this cannot be put in something safe. I'm not gee, is Drew really doing what he should be? That's not the.
No.
We didn't think that.
Okay, is there any other discussion about this? Then if not, could I have a motion to approve the finance reports?
I so move.
Thank you.
Second.
Don. Thank you, Rod. Okay, Dina, could you please do a roll call?
Okay. Don Hill, what is your vote?
Aye.
Rodlin Harris, what is your vote?
Hi.
And Lisa Diaz-Nash, what is your vote?
Aye.
And Dr. Lester Chin, what is your vote?
Aye.
Elizabeth DeWinter, what is your vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Lynn, for adding to that conversation. Move on to public comment. Persons wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda may submit to the recording secretary a request to speak form. State law prevents the board from taking action on any matter not on this agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for further review. Dina, do we have anyone who wishes to make public comment?
No, we don't.
Okay, well then I will close public comment and move on to old business. So I think, James, we are all very interested in getting an update from you on what's going on at the library and reopening.
Sure. So this is where we are right now. Our goal is to open the week right after the July 4th holiday, July 6th, up to about 75% capacity at Main and the branches. We will provide communication to the public on June 5th because we're still working out details. We will provide our plan to staff as well as the labor representatives on June 1st, because they have to have an opportunity, particularly the labor unions have to have an opportunity to review the plan. There's some real questions about, there's some real questions that we can't yet answer about how the recent abrupt changes in mask wearing will impact the workplace, as far as patrons in the building without mask, with mask, how long we can keep that rule. So we are waiting for some guidance on that. Let me see, what's next is after we open the branches in Maine at around 75% at the beginning of July, the next step that we plan is to open, hopefully, full, complete, barring a setback, at the start of September. We also plan to, it is marked as probably return to passport services in July. And let's see. We're just waiting to see after June 15th, if the rules are actually going to be removed, what the guidelines are going to be around social distancing and wearing masks, and whether or not, for sure, emergency orders and mandates are going to be removed. Right now, the proposed hours would look something like 10 to 6, Monday and Wednesdays at Main, noon to 7, Tuesdays and Thursdays, regular hours on Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays, which were 10 to 5 before, 1 to 5 on Sundays. At the branches, there will be some combination of 3 days a week, open 5 hours a day, probably between 11 and 4. The late day will be 1 to 6, and Fridays 12 to 5, which is what it is now. What else did I want to mention about this? There was something else that I'm drawing a blank on. Well, that's an overview, I guess I should say. And there was one more thing that I wanted to mention that just went blank on me. Any questions or anything you need for me to repeat?
I believe Liz.
I have a question.
Sure.
And maybe this is what you were thinking that you forgot to mention, about book returns. So right now, at least at Maine, we can only return books when the library is actually open.
Yes.
Or is it going to be allowable to return when the library is not open?
Yes, a very good question. So to provide some context to that, before the pandemic, the book returns were open. The automatic materials handling system and at the branches, the book returns were open 24 hours a day. Once the pandemic started, there was a quarantine on items. And so that meant that we would shut down the book returns at night, partially because even the manual book return at Maine is not weatherproof. So since the automatic book return was being shut down, because if you put things in an automatic book return, it automatically gets checked in. And because we were doing a quarantine for much of the pandemic, basically up until about 2 weeks ago or a week ago, we couldn't allow people to put things in an automatic book return because they automatically get checked in. We had to have everything done manually so that the bins could be taken to an area and set for at first 72 hours, then it was 96 hours, then it went down to 48 hours, and now there's no quarantine. But we were held up because there was no way, the PLS libraries decided on May 3rd, quarantine was no longer warranted based on the science and the medical information, public health information. But there was some challenges because some of the PLS libraries still have fines like us, some other libraries don't. So we still couldn't allow the automatic check-in because people would get fined, and then then staff would be scrambling, trying to remove the fines, and people would be upset. So a workaround has been conceived, but it has not yet been put into action. And the information I got was very soon that we would be able to, so that's the only thing that's holding us up, is that we don't have a way for people to turn in their items in the automatic system, which is the only option at Maine, because the manual system is not weatherproof. And if it rained or something at night, then the materials would get destroyed. So we're just waiting on PLS to enact a workaround that will allow items to be turned in an automatic system. I can't explain the technicalities of it, except to say they said very soon they will get it worked out, and then we will be able to have the book returns open 24 hours a day again. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, maybe even in the next week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. And Lester.
Thank you. Director Moore, I have 2 questions. Can you say more about staff's concern about masks? Like, are they, is your sense from the unions that they feel safer if patrons are still required to wear masks?
Yes, so here's the deal. Like I said, there's been sort of a whiplash set of announcement on changes in safety rules and masking rules lately. Public places are complicated. For example, I was told that at the Giants game and the Warriors game, they are allowing people in who show that they have a vaccine card or they show that they've been vaccinated. What that means is that they are only letting people in who can show that they are vaccinated. So anyone inside the building is guaranteed vaccinated. You don't have to check anyone with your mask on, with your mask off. A public place cannot do that. We cannot discriminate like that. We have to let people in who are vaccinated and who are unvaccinated. And what that means is that someone could come in, say they're vaccinated, say they're vaccinated, and we could say, give them a sticker. Someone else could come in who's unvaccinated, and then once they get in, take their mask down. And it's hard for staff to know unless they're going around approaching people and asking, have you been vaccinated, which they can't do. OSHA has not been able to keep up with the changes that have quickly come out from CDC. Their last meeting was last Wednesday, I believe, and they were not able to work out guidelines for public staff. So for example, we're complicated because they have some general guidelines that they've proposed that are for workplace guidelines on wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. But our employees work in sort of a hybrid setting where it's not just them in the office with a group of colleagues. Their office is often combined with the public space. And we have not been given any specific guidelines on how you can manage people, how you can manage safety in a place where some people may not be required to wear a mask, and we don't have a good way to police that. And our staff will spend a good percentage of their day, in most cases, if not all of the day, at least half the day, out in that public space. And so we need guidelines from OSHA. And of course, when we put forth our plan for reopening, one of the things that the labor representatives rightly are going to do is they're going to have a keen eye on the steps that are taken to protect staff safety. And if they're not satisfactory, then we will have to work with them to get them to the point that they are satisfactory. But first, we need firm guidelines from OSHA. We need firm guidelines from as far as whose rules are take precedent, the federal guidelines, state guidelines, the county guidelines. And there are some intimations of what may happen and how we'll be able to deal with it, but nothing firm yet.
Okay, thank you. I'll have some comments later, but I'll just stick to my second question for now.
Sure.
I think just correction, point of clarification. So the reason for not allowing the automatic check-in is because if it was automatically checked in, the fine would be recorded. But under the emergency policies, we're not doing fines, right? That's the reason for not doing the automatic? Because I think you said we were doing fines.
Under the emergency policy, fees were suspended, and that was not my decision. That was PLS's collective decision. The way PLS works is that we vote, whatever the majority vote is, the group has to go with it. Okay. So fees have been suspended, but not fines.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are there other questions for James? Okay, James, I've just got a question. How is it going? You've given us lots of dates. What's the...
Sure. Well, I would tell you right now, things are going fantastic. I will just be honest with you. I expected some criticism and some complaints that we weren't open enough. We have not received one. People seem to be happy to come into the building and use it. Just to give you an example, Menlo Park is still doing curbside. They're not opening up to the public at all until July 6th. So the only challenges we face is that there have been maybe 1 to 3 patrons that staff have had to repeatedly tell to keep their mask on. And I've instructed staff to give one warning. After that, the person needs to leave because we can't play around with this rule. but there have been a couple of patrons who are, staff have had to remind them almost on a daily basis to keep their mask up. But other than that, but there has not been a rush back into the library. It's been active, but it certainly hasn't been, full. But we have people there every day, using the computers, using the laptops and browsing. And so far, it has been a win-win. It really has. It's been nice to have people back in the building, and they seem to be satisfied with the limited degree that we've been open so far.
So you're not, it sounds like you're not pushing up against your self-imposed limits.
We're not pushing up against our self-imposed limits. No, I would say no. We expect things to ratchet up around the July 5th date. July 15th date. One of the challenges we have, and many libraries have, is that is bringing staff back. Some libraries have, like I was talking to someone over at Berkeley, they have 25% vacancies. We don't have that, but we had to leave a number of positions open for savings. Then we have a number of people who have been off for a long time, and some of them may not come back. So what our managers are doing right now are contacting them. They're supposed to give me an update tomorrow to get an idea on who will be back. We will probably need to use a good amount of on-call people to get things back to 75% and to 100% in the beginning. I am going to be meeting with the city manager to get some clarity on how to reconcile the fact that we have been instructed to maintain vacancies, and that worked just fine during the pandemic because we had limited service. But now that we're being reopened and expected to be reopened fully, how to reconcile the fact that we have a number of vacancies we haven't been given permission to fill. And we've been trying to get our on-call budget under control, but we're gonna need all those hours back. And this just reminded me of the thing that I forgot, Liz. The other thing that I wanted to do was take this opportunity in June to do a survey of patrons, to ask them when they are most likely to use the library or when they're most interested in using the library. One of the things I'm curious about is this. There are no plans to cut public service hours. I couldn't make that decision unilaterally anyway. But one of the things I am interested in is learning if the current public service hours really serve the public. One of the things that I have observed is that often at the main library, that 8 to 9 hour is very slow. We often have as many, sometimes more staff than we have patrons in there. So what I want to do is do a survey of the public to ask them what are their preferred hours, when are they most often likely to visit the library. It could mean that we could move some hours. It could mean instead of being open 8 to 9, Monday through Thursday, we may add an hour to Friday and be open Friday and Saturday and be open 10 to 6. It may mean that instead of being open 1 to 5 on Sundays, that we may be able to move an hour from one of those late nights and make Sundays open noon to 6 or something like that. I just want to find out what the public tastes are before we go back to 100%, because we are in a situation where there's a rare opportunity where we may be able to make an adjustment if that is indeed what public tastes demonstrate.
Thank you for that. Liz,
You're welcome.
Question.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to do a survey. And I think you're going to see with schools letting out now, that you'll have an influx of kids coming in, maybe younger kids, to the children's section in the main library anyway.
Yes, thank you. And we're going to do it at the branches as well, because I mean, I don't know, maybe, we've heard talk before where some people have asked if we could be open at 9 instead of 10. Everything, all those things should be on the table. I think the only thing is not on the table is that we're not going to cut public service hours, but we just want to see if it may be better for the bulk of our community if we move some hours. And we would be very, very careful and thoughtful in doing that. There are no imminent plans to do it. Right now, it's just about getting feedback from the community.
Super. Are there any other questions about the library update? Then Dina, do we have any public comment about this topic?
No, we don't.
Okay, great. Well, then let's go back for comments. And I think Lester, you had a comment.
Did. Thank you. I think my comment is, this board sets policies on patron conduct. We can choose to go beyond OSHA, Cal OSHA, or the guidelines. Hearing Director Moore's report that staff's concerned about this seems like a significant impediment to reopening. And, it seems like we may want to discuss that once the state of emergency is lifted, whether just as a normal course operations, we want to require this for patrons, since that is our purview. That is my comment.
And you're talking about what specifically that we could require?
The masks.
Masks. Okay.
Yes. Right.
Okay,
So even if there are no legal requirements or health officer requirements, as this, each entity can still set their own rules.
James, is there any guidance that you've received that would inform Lester's comment?
Sure. So, at the last executive team meeting of the city department heads, there were a number of questions of sort of, what are we going to do now? This June 15th announcement was made. We're the ones that are most impacted by it. City Hall to a lesser degree. And the direction that we received was to wait a little longer and to see and to give Cal OSHA time to work on their guidance and to give the state and the county time. So what that says to me is that there's probably a reasonable chance that if it's deemed necessary, who knows, what people will feel like at June 15th or what will be coming from the CDC. There's a reasonable chance that if it is deemed necessary that we will be able to continue with the mask rule anyway via Cal OSHA guidelines to protect staff or via state or county rules. So as far as Lester's proposal, it's reasonable, but I would say we probably need to wait until, and this is tough because, we're, the next meeting will be after June 15th, but we probably should wait till the next meeting to see what guidance comes out, what guidance I receive and what guidance the city gives to department heads from from the county health office, from the state health offices or the governor's office, and what Cal OSHA tells us. Lisa, you're muted.
Here I am trying to keep you guys from hearing all my voicemails going on in the background. My apologies. So Lester, you want to continue your comment on this?
Yes, actually, I guess I have to go back to a question. Director Moore, when is this discussion with the labor unions happening?
There's no planned discussion with the labor unions. We're going to share the information with staff and the labor unions June 1st. If the labor unions decide that there are some aspects of the plan that raise concern or that they want further discussion or information on, it will be their prerogative to ask for a meet and confer.
I understand. Okay.
Yes.
Then I guess, well, I think others will know, I've never been one. Yes, the next regularly scheduled meeting is late June.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly if the labor unions need more certainty, right? And it's, it seems we could have a special meeting to discuss this so that they could get more certainty regardless of what OSHA or Cal OSHA decide. And that might remove a risk from not being able to open on July 6th. Or
Oh, so in
That's
response to that, I would say obviously it will be the board's decision on whether or not to have a special meeting. I would say that it would probably be best for us to have time to give the labor unions, SEIU, our plan at the latest by June 1st,
absolutely.
and perhaps give them a week and say, you got a week to let us know, and that will probably give us an idea if such a meeting would be needed, and then if you all deem necessary, we probably could arrange a meeting before June 24th.
Mhm.
But that would give us a better idea, I think, whether or not Cal OSHA has solved this problem for us, whether or not County Health Office has helped us solve this problem.
Sure.
There is quite a bit of ambiguity.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Director Moore. Like, we should let the labor unions think about it, right? But I'm just urging us not to be bound by the June 24th date. If
Sure.
we don't.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lester. Lynn?
I had a kind of tangential question, but it's bound up in this mask issue for the employees. Do you have a sense of how many current library staff are vaccinated and who is not? And is there any guidance coming from the city or the state that's expected for employees working in a public capacity with
I can
interactions
give
with
you.
the public about that? I mean, are the folks, I'm aware of
Mhm.
one staff member who is not,
Yes.
and I know what his or her plan is, but
Yes.
if that person interacts with the public,
Yes.
I'm curious to know what the plan is.
That's one of many questions that's yet to be answered. Can a municipal organization require staff to get the vaccine? It is my understanding that private employers can. The private employers can make it mandatory, but the city attorney's office, and I imagine have plenty of company, is not sure as to whether or not we can mandate that for library staff. As far as my sense of how many staff are vaccinated, I don't know, other than casual conversations with certain people, because the information I've been given is that until we are giving clear guidelines, to be very careful about asking people their status, because you don't want to risk someone feeling discriminated against because they haven't taken the vaccine and they are not mandated to do so. What I would tell you is this, is that I've talked to a number of people casually, and honestly, I'm going to guess and say maybe not the majority, maybe half. I don't know for sure, but just a handful of people I've talked to, probably half of them have said I'm vaccinated. I am vaccinated myself. But there's another percentage who said they aren't. And I know there are even some people who don't have plans to do it, either because they say they have an allergy or they have their personal reasons.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other comments on this discussion? James, I've got a couple of comments and a question related to it. On the question side, could you please update us when you feel as if you've either heard back from the labor unions as to their opinion, or you think the time has passed and there's not going to be a response?
Okay, so just to give you an idea of what to expect, we're going to send the information out to them by June 1st. Knowing this information, we may even strive to get it out a little sooner, maybe by the end of this week if we can. And we're going to request that they let us know if they would like to meet and confer within a week. If they are willing to do that, then we should know by the end of the first week of June, which would be June 8th. And then I can let you all know something.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And then we can decide whether we need to have a follow-up meeting or not.
Okay.
Okay, and then let's see, in terms of you said you wanted to do a patron survey.
Yes.
Is that a definite plan?
That is a definite plan. And I was thinking about doing it in June, but now I'm thinking, so much energy is being poured into getting reopening. I do have a template from a colleague who recently did this down in Torrance. But Ruxana is going to work with me to refine it to our specific needs. And of course, if you have any ideas or recommendations or feedback on, what you think would be an effective way to conduct that survey or to present it or to put it together, I'm all ears because it's not my forte.
Yeah. Well, if I can be of help, certainly, I'd be happy
Okay.
to. But the big issue I'm concerned about is whom you ask.
Yes.
You get a representative sample. And
Yes.
not just the people who show up every day or
Yes.
whatever, but that's the overriding.
Well, originally thinking the plan is to, one thing about being open is that we will get a lot of feedback from the people who show up. We'll put something on a website. And I actually think that we can even, and this is something the trustees could be of help with if you're interested, we can even take the survey out into the community.
Mm-hmm.
And places where we think it may be open, where people may be open to doing the survey. But the single biggest goal I have, obviously, is to get as much broad feedback as possible. And like you said, not just the people who are there daily or who have access to computers. Absolutely.
And being able to know that trend-wise, seniors tend to say this versus students tend to say that. I mean, you obviously, any kind of
Yep.
segmentation you can do on the response is always to your benefit.
Yep. How about this? When I get first draft of the survey done, I'll be glad to share it with you guys. I could just email it to you if you just want to take a look at it and just see if it's hitting some of those points. I believe the template that was shared with me does break it down by segment, does ask you if you come for children's programs or adult programs, if you have kids, maybe even what your age range is.
Great. I think that would be wonderful. And people who are interested can respond, and people who aren't don't have to.
Sure.
Okay, that would be fantastic. And then let's see, who will be back? And then at your next update, at the next meeting,
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be really interesting for us to understand who is coming back. You said that it's lower than average, but people are still coming back. But who and what kind of trends and any kind of color you can add to those.
Sure. I can give you a little quick synopsis right now. We're seeing considerable activity, not surprisingly, in the children's area. We have some regulars who use the computers on a regular basis. And then we're seeing, surprisingly, we have some chairs set up for Wi-Fi, and those areas seem to be filled every day with people on laptops. And as far as browsing goes, honestly, I would just say from an eyeball test, I've actually seen a considerable number of seniors, mostly browsing, some on computers, and a lot of parents with kids in the kids area. And we see people in the Friends of the Library bookstore. So I would say kids, parents with kids, Wi-Fi users, laptop users, and seniors.
Those are all great groups to, actually ask them to take the survey.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Rod, you had a comment.
You're muted.
No longer am I mute. No.
It's impossible to mute Rod.
how should I take that? No, James, my question is about, you mentioned that the template for the survey is from Torrance. I'm just wondering, have they done the survey? What's their status in comparison to ours with regard to opening? If they have done it, have they gotten feedback? Just, is there any relevance from anything they've done there, I guess is the question.
Well, it's different. I don't know exactly if they're open yet. I didn't ask the director, Yalan, that question. But in their case, they're dealing with budget cuts, substantial budget cuts. And as a result of their survey, they did cut some hours in the evening. That's not on the table for us, because one of the things that city manager has made clear is that we don't want any cuts in service. So one of the things she was looking for in Torrance was where they could save. We're not looking for savings. We're looking for better allocation of hours and resources, if that is what we learn is needed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. So I think I see no more comments. Any other comments? All right, then let's say thank you, James, very much. And we look forward to hearing next month and every month about how this experiment is going.
Sure, glad to do it.
Great, thank you so much. So let's move on to our new business, the review and adoption of library policies. So James, do you want to take us through this?
Yes, so I'll start with the first one, which I think is the easiest. Let me see, and I had it up.
Yeah, and just bring us up to speed.
Sure.
Thinking.
Sure. This is a little embarrassing because I was careful to, let me pull this up and then I can share my screen with you all. Okay, here we go. So the first one is, and maybe Dina may have to give me permission, I'm not sure. Oh, it's up? Can you all see the policy? Hello?
No, we cannot.
Okay. Why is it not?
You should have an option to share your screen, James. Let me know.
Yeah, I guess I'm just having a little trouble with
I think while you're figuring that out,
Zoom.
as background, before, if you think back to before days, we had started to look at all the various policies that needed
Yes.
reviewing and review, and then we had to stop. And so James's recommendation was that we begin that process.
Sure.
Which is what's happening here.
Dina, do you have control? Because I don't see how I can share my screen.
I made you a co-host. Let me make you the host and see if you can do it now.
Oh, let me see. I think I can do it now. Okay. I take it that everyone can see my screen now. So for two policies to review, I chose two that I think would be fairly quick and fairly smooth to get us started, because there are going to be some more in-depth policies, such as, for example, the meeting room policy, which covers the Oak Room, Lower Room, etc. That's going to be a pretty in-depth process, and is going to take considerable feedback from staff who will probably need to present some at the, they will need to review that policy, and they will also probably need to present some at the, at one of our meetings. So I'm going to start with what I think is pretty much the most straightforward one. And this is the policy for maintaining library policies. As you can see, it has not been reviewed since 2010. Honestly, I don't see, this is not the sort of policy where there have been changes in rules or laws that impact this policy. This is more of a general statement of how policy making is conducted and maintained by the board. So if there were any changes, I don't have any specific changes to recommend to this policy. If there were any changes to occur with this policy, it would mostly just be a matter of taste. If any board members looked at this policy and just said, you know, I think the wording could be clearer or better. There's probably, there's just not much at the heart of it that needs to change, because all it really does is provide a general overview of how policy maintenance and policy making is done. Who does what? So I take it everyone has had a chance to look at it, and I will open the floor if anyone has recommendations on the wording or anything like that. But other than that, it's not something that evolves very much, if at all.
Are there any questions from the board about this policy? Dina, do we have any public comment about the policy?
No, we don't.
No? Okay. Are there any comments from the board about the policy? I would personally like to comment that I think this is the most amazing title of any policy you could possibly have. And it's fundamental and it's important, but I think we are allowed to make that comment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not fond of the name of this policy. Perhaps that could be an area that could be.
I think it's very clear.
Okay, yeah.
It says exactly what it means to do, which is important. It's just interesting. Lester, you have a comment.
Yeah, just too. I mean, just for clarity, right? I think it's fine as is. I like how it calls out about eliminating policies as well, like so we don't just keep adding. The only other comment is, we probably should go on the website. I think just for the purpose to let the public know that we're continually evaluating things.
And this would certainly be any time maybe in the area about the board. This could be a link from that.
Well, it's not difficult to get it on the website. It will take a little time. Is that something that you all need to officially decide on, if you want it in the area that refers to the library board specifically? We also have a policy page, where the policies are. We could add it to that page.
I personally think that would be a great idea.
Okay.
Rod, did you have a comment?
Yeah, real quick. In the second bullet, my question is about the 5 years. James, is your experience with other libraries or in a city sense to other cities, other boards within the city, is 5 years a good time? And sometimes when I see things that say at least every 5 years, it turns into basically at the end of the 5th year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so I guess A, is 5 years good? And B, I mean, I'd love to make certain that now and going forth, it's adhered to 5 years. So should it just be review all policies every 5 years and instead of at least, or am I splitting hairs? Or I just want to make sure it gets done effectively as possible for the city.
Sure. Well, first of all, 5 years is a standard. It's been that way for a while. And I think the best way to interpret that is at the latest 5 years. I don't know how this policy went unreviewed for 11 years. I don't know. I've been a city librarian for going on 3 years. So I don't know, what happened before that. Maybe it was just not reviewed because it was just not, well, I won't hazard a guess. But what I would say is this: I think the 5-year rule works. It doesn't work so well with something perhaps technologically related, but it is not mandated that we have to wait till 5 years. Therefore, if there's some sort of technological change that impacts the way that we do things and that we need new policies, then anyone on the library board or I can recommend, hey, we have an issue, we see it's rising. It's only been 2 years since we did this policy, or 3 years, but I think it's time for us to discuss perhaps amending it. So I think 5 years is a maximum time. I think what that's just saying is no longer than 5 years.
Yeah, that's how I interpret it.
Yeah,
All right, thank you.
you're welcome.
Great. Are there any other comments on this policy? Rod, is your hand just waiting to go down, or do you have?
No, I'm down, sorry.
Okay, down. All right. Well, then, could I have a motion to approve the policy as presented?
I'll move to approve the policy as presented.
Liz, could I- second, that's Rod. Thank you. Okay, Dina, could you please take the vote?
Okay, Elizabeth DeWinter, what is your vote?
Aye.
And Rodlin Harris, what is your vote?
Aye.
Lisa Diaz-Nash, what is your vote?
Aye.
And Dr. Lester Chin, what is your vote?
Aye.
Don Hill, what is your vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So now, James, let's go on to the second policy.
Absolutely. So this one, there seems to have been some, let me get to it. Policy for release of information. Lester asked me a couple of good questions about this. And I should have mentioned this with the first policy. He asked me how often these policies are referred to or staff action is needed around these policies. The policy for maintaining policies is practically never. I don't think it ever comes up. The policy for release of information concerning patrons probably comes up once or twice a year. There could be some years where it doesn't come up, but it does come up once or twice a year. And just to set the table, this is a very important policy for libraries because libraries really emphasize patron privacy. And as fortune would have it, this policy actually came up last week because we were contacted by an attorney representing someone who said that they wanted information on this patron's checkout history and that it would help this patron in a case. I was able to answer that pretty quickly by saying, we do not keep a record of patron checkout activity. As soon as you turn something in, it is erased. And that is meant to protect your privacy. If a patron wants to keep a record of their checkout activity, they can do that. We have a function on our website that allows them to do that. It's pretty easy, but if you need instruction, the staff can help you set it up. But that's something that a patron would have to opt into. Otherwise, patron records are automatically erased. If we had kept those records, this person would either have to ask for their records themselves or his or herself, or they would have to get a court order from and present it to us that we would work with our city attorney to get them the information that they've requested. So it doesn't come up very often, but maybe once or twice a year, we might get a request. If law enforcement, for example, were doing an investigation, same thing. We'd have to get a court, they'd have to get a court order. They'd have to get official permission. So this is the record as it is. And I want you to pay attention to here because now it says, now the rule says, and I sent out a couple of things on this and I'll pull that up. Now the rule says pursuant written authorization by the individual to whom the records pertain or by court order, as where here it says Superior Court. And then the new rule, which I will pull up now, also has information on library circulation records. So, I mean, library patron use records. So I sent this out to you all and I realized I sent it a little late. I sent it this afternoon around 3:30. I figured if I gave you some recommendations, this may help with getting the conversation started. So one of the things I inserted was patron use records along with library registration and circulation, which was in the original policy. Patron use records was not a part of the original policy, and I don't think it was a part of the law for the California Public Records Act when the original policy was written, and that was itself 10 years ago, 11 years ago. So there's been a change. Now there is mention of, let me find it. Now there is mention of patron use records. And this is not a part of the policy. I just added this for you all because it provides a definition of what patron use records are. In place of getting permission from Superior Court, I was advised by the Assistant City Attorney to change that to by court order. And that is also a part of the new or updated California Public Records Act. And in the original policy, there was a definition of what was a registration record, circulation records. So I thought since now there's this thing called patron use records, that it might be useful to add a definition here in the second paragraph of what patron use records are. I don't know if you all want to go into that much detail, but I just figured some recommendations would help get the conversation started. In my perspective, I'm a little taken aback by this addition of patron use records in addition to circulation records. But and I read this several times, but from what I can tell, circulation records are under the umbrella of patron use records. And for some reason, this notion of patron use records have been added since 2010. And it says right here, patron use, the difference I can tell between patron use records and circulation records is that patron use records would include, in addition to borrowing information or identifying information, which go under circulation, it includes any use of library services, any use of library resources, including database searches and any personally identifiable information requests or inquiries. Listen, this is very legal jargon, so I understand if anyone needs further clarification, but from what the best I could tell is that patron use records expands upon library circulation records to include database searches, information requests, or inquiries. And that is new. Let me know if you have any questions now as far as any information or clarification you need to begin the discussion on updating the policy for release of information concerning library patrons.
Does anyone have a question for James? Lester.
Thank you, Chair Diaz-Nash. Dr. Moore, because I think I've seen your report on like Wi-Fi usage. So does the library have a collection of like which computers have, each computer has an identifying number have connected to our network?
Absolutely not. And I can get you more specific information if you want a technical explanation. I can get that from Gary Welty, our tech specialist. But everyone, so if you get on a public computer and you use it, as soon as you get off, whatever searches you did are erased. If you come in and you use your laptop computer, as soon as you're off, when you're off, those records are erased. I'm not well versed in the technical language for that. So I don't have a problem if you wanted to extend this conversation, and maybe we could even invite Gary to explain that. But I just know as a general rule, almost to a fault in some libraries, there is this guideline to keep no records or traces of what people check out, look at, or search. And the reason for that is that one of our, perhaps our single most important guiding principle of public libraries, or libraries in general, is intellectual freedom. And the view that anyone should be able to come in and look up what they're interested in or doing work on and not be fearful that what they're looking up could be used against them later. Say, for example, you were a researcher and you were looking up information on terrorist activities. We would never want a patron who is actually doing legitimate research and checking websites or whatever to get in trouble because they went to this or that website when they may have had a legitimate reason to go there because maybe they're working on a PhD or something like that. So our general rule is to stay out of people's business in that regard. And we certainly don't begrudge legal authorities for needing to investigate if someone is doing something that may be illegal. Basically, our rules follow the law, but we don't really offer a lot as far as keeping records. We don't offer anything really as far as keeping records of what a person searched that could be helpful in that regard to, say, law enforcement or someone doing investigations. And that's just to protect patron privacy and intellectual freedom.
Thank you. Well, it's very comforting to know that.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a clarification, there's what do you search for, but is there a record of whether someone even connected to the Wi-Fi?
I don't have a definitive answer to that, Lester. I think the answer is no, but rather than take a guess, I would like to follow up with Gary Welty.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's it for me.
That's it? Okay, great. Any other questions from the board?
I have a question, Lisa.
Yes.
Chairwoman Lisa. My question is, it's a minor question. James, in the third paragraph, the first sentence, specifically kind of the middle third of that sentence just confuses me a little bit. The confidentiality of library circulation records does not extend to statistical reports of registration and circulation or to records of fines. Of course, the latter part of the sentence makes perfect sense. It doesn't extend to records of fines. Why would it even be necessary? I don't understand. It's just my lack of knowledge here. Why would it say does not extend to statistical reports of registration? Is that just because, well, I'll let you answer. I'm confused as to, maybe I don't understand statistical reports of registrations correctly.
And what did you say, the third paragraph?
Yeah, the first sentence.
Oh, yeah. So I wasn't here when that was developed, so I don't know the exact logic behind it. I know that when we have statistical reports, when we do statistical reports, typically we're looking at numbers.
Exactly.
We're not looking at specific, we're not looking at, say someone needs to run a statistical report like Mary Kwan does each month to tell you, how many checkouts there were. So I would like to follow up on that because I don't know why that would be included, because I've never seen a statistical report that actually has specific patron information. Now, the second part of that is we do have the prerogative to share information for fine collections.
Sure, yeah.
And libraries do use fine collection services. We no longer provide information to credit reporting agencies. That is something that was decided before I became director, and it's something that's pretty much been universally accepted, maybe almost, that libraries don't want to damage people's credit, but we still have the prerogative to use a collection agency to try to get payment or try to get materials back. But Rod, that's a very good question. I do not know why that particular statement would be included, because I've never seen a statistical report that had specific patron information in it.
Thanks. Yeah, it's either why would it be included, or if it is included, why would the confidentiality not extend there? But thank you very much.
Good, very good question. Yes.
If I could just throw something in on that. I have been involved in situations at companies I've worked at where we have produced statistical reports about our customer trends, as an example. And there have been people who have objected to having their information included in those reports, even though their information is totally masked and it's just used as a statistic. So my guess would be that, and I'm sure Gary could follow up and confirm this, that people, to prevent that from being an issue, just to say that that's excluded.
That sounds like a really logical explanation, Lisa. I think that is probably it. But I'm glad to verify it and see if I can get any further clarification. But I think that is probably it. I know that we do have some patrons who are very, very, and this represents a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage, but who are very, very concerned about government collection of their information. And we've even had some patrons, who occasionally think that someone is spying on them. And so that may have something to do with why this is included, because as much as we prioritize patron privacy, you cannot have 100% privacy if you're going on the internet, even if you're going from your home. And for our purposes, there are going to be bits of information that we'll need to use, even if it's anonymous, as part of building our statistical reports or getting an idea of usage patterns. So that's probably it, Lisa, but I'm glad to follow up and confirm.
Thank you.
Let you all know, yes.
Lester.
Yeah, I just realized I had another technical question. Director Moore, for services like Hoopla, Overdrive, and Canopy, what is our ability to control? Like, how does that work? Let me take it back. I don't even know how it works, right? Like, because, like, I think I have my own Hoopla account, so am I bound by Hoopla's terms of service and privacy, or do we have some control over it? And you don't have to answer on the spot, because I know it's a rather
I won't be able
technical
to
question. But I think in the general vein of third-party services, like how it works and how much privacy there is, it'd be helpful to know.
Sure, I can follow up on that. And just to let you know, the way I would follow up on it is I would go to the IT director for Plan, which is basically the service that PLS, that is the IT support that PLS provides for us. And he is also the one who negotiates often directly on our behalf with our vendors for services like Hoopla and Canopy. And I would talk to him, his name is Farouk, and see how that works from a technical standpoint. I can get that information for you.
Okay, any other questions? Dina, do we see any public? Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, with the share screen, it can be difficult to.
Oh, you can. We can.
I just wanted to confirm that the only change in the policy that you're recommending, James, is the by order of the court versus by order of the Superior Court, that everything else is staying the same?
That, and I added this patron use records, and I added this sentence here explaining what patron use records are. Patron use records were never mentioned in the previous policy.
Okay, yeah, because I don't have the draft version here, so I've been trying to track it. But my comment really pertains to just surfacing along running interest of the foundation to have better access to patron contact information in the service of spreading the word about ways that people may wish to support the foundation. And I realized that there is an out here that if people give written authorization, you know, their potential, like their email address or something might be able to be shared with us. And it is sometimes during registration. I don't think we get very many of those. I'm not sure if that's because of our sort of the language on the registration cards, if people are really given an opportunity to learn more about the foundation. I do know that when public events are being held, the librarians will oftentimes circulate a sign-up sheet where people can self-select to receive additional information, including things from the foundation. So this is likely not the time or place to take that up, but I did want to make sure that the trustees understand that we are hardly the only foundation that finds itself in this position. As a matter of fact, I think most of them do, unless they are a department of the actual library and not a separate organization like we are. But that perhaps the execution parts of these policies, insofar as it might give us a better opportunity on occasion to contact people who are using the library, we could maybe take a look at the messages that we give people and how to improve that. I would love to have that explored. That's all.
Okay, I think that would be a good future topic. So, any other questions before I open it up to public comment? Don't think so. Dean, is there anyone for public comment?
No public comment.
No. Okay, then let's close public comment. And any final comments on this proposed policy with the changes that James is suggesting? I guess I would definitely support the inclusion of the patron use records in this policy, because so much of library usage has moved online, and whether it's just using a database or getting a song when you're at the library, or just accessing the website and the services. I think that's a huge area given the growth trends. So I absolutely would support it. And I think changing from Superior Court to court order just as a standard change that seems to make a lot of sense. So any other comments from anyone else? Okay. Lester, yes.
Thank you, Chair Nash. Yeah, I think I agree with Chair Nash that, like, I think some of there's like, I guess I have three groups of comments. Like, one is, you know, the common sense changes make a lot of sense. Just to keep in line, and it's good to kind of spell out things. The second one is, I think the patron use records, I felt like it could use some expansion to cover, you know, technology has changed. And, you know, we don't have to have an exhaustive list, but perhaps there'd be a couple more things that are more electronically oriented, like just, you know, just to spell out those kinds of usage, as well as, you know, programs. I think, you know, there's like what programs you attend might, you know, I think that could be considered something people want to keep private. So I think just expanding the definition of patron use records to go beyond what the California League of Cities, I think it would be beneficial to do that. Okay, I take it. Sorry, not 3, but 4 total. The third one is, I guess, to the point earlier about people opting out. If we don't seem to have an opt-out mechanism, if you really don't want to be included in the statistical reports. So I guess based on Trustee Lynn Harris's comment or question, made me realize that this may be something we want to, like, provide a mechanism for. And finally, I think it's as I was recently like confused by the differences between library policies on this and the policies of organizations that run programs at a library, I think at the very least we should like make it more obvious that to let folks know that like their thing, if they go to invent a library, it may or may not be governed by the library's policies, and they should just be aware of that, and that they're organizations that have their own terms of use. And then I guess the last one I think is more a suggestion for you, Director Moore, of like whether we want, we want organizations that host events at the library just to make it more obvious that like, hey, they have their separate, privacy policy in terms of use. Like on any sign-up sheet, it just has to be like very visible. So just to avoid patient confusion about like, kind of like where their protection ends and like what they're opting into. Because if someone thinks like, oh, okay, this is like a library program and I'm going to opt in and I'll be protected by the library's policy, but it's actually a third-party organization, that could be an unpleasant surprise. So those are my 4 comments.
Couple of comments. So I do think you raise a very good issue, important issue as far as the ways in which technology may change the governance of patron privacy policies. I had never thought about what it means if someone uses a streaming service or if someone uses free audiobook service, things like that. So I don't know exactly how that's going to turn out. I'll have to do some checking around. The other thing, as far as the opt-out on the statistical reports, I don't know if I got 2 thoughts about that. Number one, I don't know if I'm 100% in support of that. I'm not saying I'm totally against it. I just don't know if I'm 100% in support of that because I don't know if we'll be able to keep accurate records if people can opt out. And I don't see their inclusion in how the inclusion in those statistics compromises anyone's individual privacy. The other thing is, I don't know if that's technically possible. I don't know if it's technically possible for us when Mary does the report, the statistical report, to see how many checkouts there were or how many computer sessions there were. I don't know if it's technically possible to exclude individual patrons because they've opted out. So the first thing is I would need to see if that's possible. And then I would want to think about and perhaps have a further discussion if it is the best thing for what we need to do as far as providing accurate information, which ideally is meant to help us provide improved or the best services.
Comments from other members of the board? I guess my thought would be that Lester has raised a number of, I think, very good points. And then James has, and maybe James, it would make sense for you to take it away, think about what has been suggested, and then talk to people about the questions you have, and bring this back to the next meeting with your recommended revisions to the policy that's in front of us.
Glad to do it.
Does that sit well with other people? Yeah. Okay, great. So I guess do we have to vote on that? Or we don't have to vote on that, do we? No. Okay, great. So then we will take that up at the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Lester. Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. So let's move on to reports and announcements. And James, once you finish your notes, let's turn it back to you.
Okay. So I'm just going to report on one thing, and let me see if I can get this. Let me see if I can get this up. I have so many screens open. Okay, so Dina, well, I'll tell you I'll do it in a minute. So in order to be not prolong our meeting, I wanted to just share with you all that, well, first of all, I'll give you an update on the homebound delivery program. Right now it has settled on 8 regular participants. Senior care home activity may grow with the ending of the pandemic. Marketing options, I think is fair to say, have been exhausted. As far as any expansion, Cynthia, who does it, I mean, she's going everywhere. She's even going to homes where people with disabilities are being taken care of. So she's going just about everywhere. It's up on our website. She's gone out into the public. So it may just be that we just have a small percentage of patrons that need this service, at least right now. And if that's the case, we can manage it. We'll see what happens with the senior homes after the pandemic is done for good. The only policy implications would be probably asking, and this is what they're allowing right now under emergency services, but obviously that's going to be coming to an end. So we need to talk about what the permanent policies would be. The policy implication for the board would be extending checkouts from 5 weeks, which is what regular patrons get, to 6 weeks for people using this program. And it's my understanding that that was what patrons who used the previous home delivery service in the past were granted, the seniors, because there was an understanding that there may be some trouble. It may take them a little longer to use the materials, to read the books, to get them back. So what I propose is that, and I've already told our librarian this, is that she may be asked to come to one of our upcoming meetings, because we are getting at the point where perhaps some policy discussion should be had as to whether or not we need to extend the checkout times, and she could provide more specific details. But right now we only have 8 participants. It has been widely shared, and there's no disappointment in that. It may just turn out that we only have that many people who need the service. The next thing I wanted to share is that at the Hillsdale Library, we'll be adding a commemorative plaque beside the Hillsdale flagpole in honor of Alan Kelly. Currently, the flagpole says, "This flagpole placed in memory of Alan Kelly," but it provides no information on who Alan Kelly is or why his name is on the flagpole. Alan Kelly's sister, Leslie Kelly Ewing, contacted me a couple of months ago and asked if I would consider updating the flagpole with a new plaque. The background story is this. Alan Kelly's father, Les Kelly, was the contractor who built the Hillsdale Library in 1956. His son was killed in 1965 at age 22 in a military training plane crash. The Kelly family then donated the flagpole at Hillsdale in his memory. Alan's sister, Leslie, a longtime Hillsdale resident, remembers that her father successfully bidding on that job was huge for his burgeoning business, and it really launched his company, Les Kelly Construction, which became well known in the area. Family lives a few blocks away. So Miss Kelly called me and asked if we could update the plaque to something nicer that provides some contextual information. All new works of public art need to go through a formal review process by the city before approval. That was something I learned through this, because I'm often asked if we can add public art, etc. This is not considered a new work of public art. This is considered an update of what is already there. So after I discussed it with city manager, Parks and Rec, Public Works representative, I decided that it would be appropriate to update the flagpole with a new plaque, because it is an improvement on the plaque that is there and is already over 50 years of age. There's a precedence for this because the library provided contextual backstory information for the Benson Holocaust display on the 2nd floor at the main library. In accordance with city rules, Ms. Kelly is paying all costs for the new plaque. The new plaque will be nicer. It will provide helpful contextual information, and it will respectfully honor a Hillsdale family who played a pivotal role in the library, building of the library, and donated the original flagpole, which is still standing there. And to be honest, I understood her desire to have this contextual information. So I promise I'll be done with my report soon, but I wanted to give you a picture of the current plaque and what the new plaque will look like. So I keep having trouble with this share the screen thing. Here we go. Okay, so I'll be done with this very quick. Can you all see my screen?
No.
No? Why? Let me try this one more time. Share screen. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this is, let me see if I can get your faces off of here. So this is the current flagpole, which the Kelly family donated. There's the plaque. And I'll give you an up-close picture of it. And this is what the plaque says now. This flagpole placed in memory of Alan A. Kelly, nothing else. So what is being proposed to replace it with is this. Alan A. Kelly, 1942 to 1965, and some information on who he was, and a few words of commemoration on him. So that's what we're going to be doing at the Hillsdale Library. We're going to be adding that plaque and just sharing that information with you all. We're going to be adding a new plaque in place of the old plaque.
I just think that's lovely.
All right, thank you.
And
let me get my, yes, go ahead. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
James, either that you or Dina or someone share this information with Patrice Olds, the city clerk, because she is heading up the memorial to our fallen heroes effort from the city staff perspective.
Okay.
And they're gathering all this information about who within the San Mateo community, whether it's military or fire or police, has fallen in the line of duty. So this should be added to that list.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chair Nash. Director Moore, is this considered a gift that we have to accept?
No. So I did a lot of research on this because we have a lot of generous people. Well, not a lot, but we have some generous people who offer to buy a new statue or something like that. And some of them are really great offers. One of the things I learned was that, Heather Stewart, who works in, I believe, Public Works, is senior management analyst there. They have a process. So if you have any ideas for Public Works, for public art, that would be considered a gift. The original item was considered a gift. Wait a minute, you know what? That's a good question. I don't know if we need to do a ceremonial thing, but the original item was considered a gift, 1965. This is just considered an update. But that said, it was made very clear to Ms. Kelly that the city, that the family would need to pay for it. And this is similar to a plaque. The model that we use is plaques that are placed on park benches for people. Now this is nicer, and she's paying a bit more. So I don't know the exact answer, Lester. I don't know if it's considered a gift. She is paying for it. I can follow up on that as well. But what was the conversation I had with city manager, as well as Parks and Recs, as well as Public Works, is it is just an improvement on what is there.
Okay. I mean, I guess my opinion is, I don't think I'm asking you for any follow-up, but I think you've gone through the process to establish that it is not it doesn't have to go through the Public Art Commission process.
Yes.
So
And technically, I don't think it is a gift because she's
Well, I'm saying
she's given us something, but we didn't ask for it and we didn't accept it. It's basically she's asking us to do something nicer for her brother, and we said that we would, but you got to pay for it.
Okay. I mean, it seems like she's sure. I think just to like skip the paperwork, so to speak, like we could just treat it as a gift and like accept it, and then like if it turns out to be unnecessary, like no real harm done. If it avoids like some red tape later, like it seems like we can just kind of preempt it with like 5 minutes. At least that's my opinion. And then you don't have to go ask like, is this a gift or not, right? We just
Maybe the time. That's
Okay.
a good question. Part of me is like, is that a public works gift? Like, or gifts for us inside the light? You know, it's an interesting question.
I'm glad to follow up.
Well, I take Lester's point. If we just vote on it, maybe we save you any trouble. And if we didn't need to do it, no harm, maybe.
It's up to you.
all right. Well, I mean, I appreciate you showing the picture. I think that's helpful. So like, I move we accept this gift to the library.
I second.
Okay, then we have a motion to accept the gift to the library in a second. Dina, can you please call roll?
Okay, Dr. Lester Chim, what is your vote?
All right.
And Elizabeth De Winter, what is your vote?
Aye.
Lisa Diaz-Nash, what is your vote?
Aye.
Don Hill, what is your vote?
Aye.
And Rodlin Harris, what is your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Great. James, anything else that you wish to share with us tonight?
No. I'm shutting up.
It's lovely though. That's great.
All right, thanks.
Okay, Lynn, over to you.
The unmute button. I'll keep it brief. I'm sorry to have missed you last month. I was taking some time off after the gala. I was reading the minutes and it sounds like you all had a good time. So we achieved our goal there. So thank you for attending and supporting. And it was an interesting new thing for us to do, and we're still sort of debriefing and figuring out what we keep and what we've learned and where we go next. Just to let you know, the library is in modified opening and the foundation is still working remotely. Currently, the plans are to continue doing that for a while, in large part just to see when we might get back to some semblance of ours. So I'm very interested in this patron survey that you're planning to do, James. You know, one of the things that we do is we have evening meetings there. So if it's a question of putting, you know, our shingle back out in the office, we need to kind of know how long we can be there. So it'll be interesting to follow along there. Oh, shoot. Pardon me, the wind just blew my note sheet here. The only other thing that I really wanted to just let you, well, there's two things. First of all, June, just like the library, is the end of our fiscal year. And so we will be having our annual meeting next month. And at that time, we do anticipate processing a grant at some level for the library. So in many ways, this is a very fortunate thing that we were able to do that, because when we built this budget at June of last year, there were many, many uncertainties about our ability to fundraise in an environment, you know, in a pandemic, basically. And we really have had quite a remarkable year. So I believe the board will be recommending a nice grant as part of our biannual process. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that we were talking about the legacy fund and investing. We have completed and put the final touches on and passed an investment policy now. And for those of you who may not have been paying close attention, we have now amassed $1 million in a quasi-endowment fund based on bequests that have been made to the Library Foundation for the benefit of the library in the last 4 to 5 years. One of those trusts is actually still active, and we anticipate probably another 75 to 100,000 distribution from them before that estate is wrapped up. Nothing else on the horizon, but these are the kinds of gifts that we don't know that they're coming. Oftentimes people have put us in their estate planning documents, and we, of course, would not know until they pass. The Finance Committee met last week and has blessed an investment portfolio, which we are promptly executing in our Charles Schwab account. And we will beginning probably to begin reporting on that regularly to the board of directors, either on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis going forward, maybe after the beginning of the fiscal year, the new fiscal year in July. And I think that's all I have.
Well, that's a great report. Good news on all fronts. Thank you very much. Excellent. So, Liz, what would you like to share?
I wanted to give some very positive feedback from my mom, who's a retired school librarian who moved here about 6 months ago. And she went very recently, last week, to the main library to get her library card. And she had the most wonderful experience. She said everybody was so lovely and nice. And then I met her a few days ago at the library to give her a tour as best I could. And she said it's the most impressive public library she's ever been to, state of the art. And she was so impressed, and she's excited to come more regularly. So I had to pass that along.
That's wonderful.
And the only other, I'll pass that on. The only other thing I wanted to add is I attended the wildfire talk, which was mostly way above my head, but I did find it interesting. So,
thank you. Lester. Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay, great. Dawn.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Rod.
Chair Nash, a couple things. I did a little informal survey or two of my own library and more. I went to the main branch, and then on another occasion, I went to the Hillsdale branch and identified myself as, I had my badge, identified myself as a member of the board and walked around. I probably spoke to about 20 people combined. I just went up to them and said, can I have a couple minutes? I want to ask you 3 questions. And I asked them, obviously the layup to begin, did you miss the library? But then I asked, did you miss it as much as you thought, more than you thought, less? Unanimity, they missed it more than they thought. Then I got into what'd you miss about it? And it was very interesting. And then I tried to get a cross section. You know, you alluded earlier to the kids, and a lot of kids, where's story time? I want story time back. But a lot of people, the kind of the elderly, so to speak, just missed being there, they said. A lot of people missed books. A lot of people missed research. So it was very interesting. Just great responses from the, again, 20 or so people at the branches combined. The Hillsdale branch in particular, very, very busy. Very, very busy. And then I attended, just for my own edification, I attended one of the STEAM labs on Friday. With about 6 other kids building broadboard circuits. So that was very interesting. The leader of it was excellent, and it was just a neat experience. So that's my little report. So you don't need to do a survey, James. It's done. Everything's great. Everyone's happy.
Thank you, Rod. I know Adriana told me that you came to the event. She really likes you. I noticed you said 6 other kids. So it's good to keep the kid inside you alive.
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't have my bedboard. Next time I will participate. I kind of missed out. Seriously, it looked like it was great.
Yeah. And I would encourage all of us to do exactly what Rod did. There is no better way to put a smile on your face and make you feel good about the work you're doing than doing exactly what you did and talk to people about the library. So thank you, Rod. Thank you very much. So let's see. Marcia, welcome. We're very happy to have you here. And is there anything you'd like to share with us?
Thank you so much, Chair Lisa. Just to reiterate what some of you have said, I share that sentiment, and just by watching the public on my walks throughout the building, I see them like talking to each other, like a patron to another patron, just saying how great it is to be back in the library. So they're talking to each other, they're letting us know. So they are very happy to be back. And I have to say, I feel very happy too as I'm walking towards the building and I see people actually going in. It's just very, it's a great thing to see. And I want to report that, Lynn and I have pushed to also have the bookstore open, and it has been open. We have had high foot traffic there, and also regular sales every day.
Excellent.
So people have been happy with having the bookstore open as well.
Yes, yes. Well, may they continue to come and everybody learn about that. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, and please come back. Come back and visit us more often.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Dina, is there anything that you want to share?
Well, I'll just piggyback on what Marcia just said about the bookstore. I was talking to Lee, one of our on-call staff, per diem on-call, and she lives in Foster City, went to the Foster City Library. Of course, that's a county library, and she was disappointed their bookstore wasn't open, so I made sure to tell her ours is open. So she was happy.
That's
And
fantastic.
if I may just give a couple of kudos, because I forgot, our librarians Carla and Paul, as well as Cynthia, they've been done an amazing work because we don't have our volunteers back yet. So they've been put in some more, actually a lot of work into the library, the bookstore. So they've completely redesigned it and made it a lot more appealing for people to come and see and also shop.
Excellent. And we'd love to get that kind of feedback either from you or your colleagues at upcoming meetings to help keep us, really understanding what life at the library is like. And on that happy note, I actually have an email that I received from Marcia that I wanted to share with the library trustees, because if you recall, the foundation and the Friends of the Library had a pop-up book donation, and it was incredibly successful and caused many people to have to work very, very hard to try and quarantine the books and understand what was going on and figure out what to do with them and sell them on Amazon. And there were some books that did not get put up on Amazon and did not get sold. And the question was, what do you do with them? And Marcia and her colleagues worked with a nonprofit called Books for Africa. And they actually organized the shipment of last year's textbooks and books that are not quite maybe the newest of the new to libraries in Africa, so that they're still great books, so that more people have access to those books and they aren't thrown away, but they're used and can be shared. And Marcia and her colleagues worked with a nonprofit, Maktobas, that sent the books to Kenya and came in actually. And Marcia said they took thousands of books, 3 full-size vans filled with materials. So if you think about that, think of all the people who donated that material or the library had that material. Think of all the people that wanted to use those materials and getting it from one place to another over thousands of miles. That was quite a logistical effort. So it's great that we had that partner to help us out. And then Marcia mentioned that she donated a few boxes of children's material to a young woman by the name of Anya Patel, who's a student at the Nueva School and an ambassador for the African Library Project, and that those materials were donated and helped double the African Library Project in 2019, double their collection. And they were able to take approximately 1,000 books. And the library also donated a few boxes of materials to the San Mateo County Jail and to local teachers. So I just think that was a wonderful story that all of us should hear about, because that's a way that so many different people intersect, whether it's the donors of the books, the people who organize it, the people who receive them, who logistically get them from place to A to place B. And I just think that's just a great way of showing how the library is so important to so many different people's lives. And our entire community is involved in making it a success. So Marcia, thank you so much for sharing those stories with us. And may we continue. So every book goes to good use. Thank you. That's my update. So if there are no other comments, then I would love to call this meeting adjourned at 7:25 p.m. And Lester, did you have a question? Is there something concerning?
Well, Director Moore sent out a list of policies for review, and I mean, there's a long list of 8. We talked about 2, but it might help to
Absolutely, that was my mistake for
pick the next
meeting.
at least the next one. We don't have to like order all remaining 6.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. James, do you have a recommendation, or does anybody on the board have a recommendation as to what should be the next policy or policies that we undertake to review?
I don't have a recommendation off the top of my head, but I do know I can provide you with this information. The meeting room policy will take some time, and it will probably need some preparation because it is, I believe, several pages long. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dina. And the administrative team will need to go over that policy closely because things have changed and things have become more complicated. And that's one that could easily take 2+ meetings. So if you want to tackle a hard one sooner or a bigger one sooner, that's the one to go with. But honestly, any one of them that you choose is fine. Let me see if I can pull them up if you want me to. But I think any one is fine, and because they all got to be done.
Would that particular policy, could the fact that the library is reopening and what's going on, could that evolve over the next couple of months? Should we let that one sit for a little bit?
That's probably a good idea. Don't you think, Dina? Maybe Marcia, you can weigh in. It's kind of complex to. That's going to take several steps for sure.
Yeah, this one is really long. It's the longest one we have. So and we will need to review it, I think.
Let me see.
So maybe we hold that one off.
Yeah, I concur with that. I think we need a little more time to work on it as a team before presenting to you.
Okay.
I'm trying to pull up the policies that I sent out to see if I could find one specific. But I don't want to hold anyone up. We're almost ending the meeting right on time. Is it okay if I send out a recommendation after the meeting, or do we need to officially approve one now?
I would suggest that we could ask that you make a recommendation as to what we look at the next time. So
Okay.
that there's obviously communication with the public.
I wasn't prepared. I don't have that email with all the policies on it. Does anyone have that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lester, do you have a suggestion?
Yes, if I may. Well, so I'm looking at the list. I'm sort of flipping screens. So Director Moore, I have a question. The art exhibit policy, how often, when was the last time that was applied?
What do you mean applied? Because every year there's a process where artists submit their works, and there's a committee that chooses the works that will be on display at the library and at the at City Hall.
Okay.
But I don't think we're like regularly getting questions on it or anything. That could be a good policy, and if that's the case, I would want to invite Noreen Twee to the meeting to give you all some context, and she may even be able to make some recommendations on how that policy could be updated to help her with the process. But I'm not aware of anyone, I'm not aware of us having to explain it to anyone
Okay.
or anyone questioning it during my time at the library.
Okay, I think I was wondering, I guess, and then I was trying to ask the question in a non-leading way. I was trying to, I had a hypothesis that that might be one we could like do away with. Like, it doesn't seem like it's really a, you know, but maybe not. So kind of swing and a miss on that one.
What?
So let me go with my backup.
Uh-huh.
I did have a plan B. So you had noted that the unattended child policy, like we had kind of like made like some headway on this back in 2019.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one where it's like, 60 to 80% done, and then with like one more push, we could just kind of like get that across the finish line. But I'm curious.
Actually, I think that one was done.
Yeah, that
So
was right before
yeah.
the pandemic, yeah.
So forgive
Okay.
me, Lester. When I first sent it out, I did not see that it had been officially approved. And then I asked Dana to double check the accuracy, and she found that it had been approved in March 24th of 2020.
Sorry. Okay.
No worries.
Plan C. let's-
Okay. I don't have a. All right. Plans.
I can't believe I cannot find this email with the policies that I sent. It's driving me crazy.
Can we just agree?
Well, then let me. Okay. I'm going to go with Plan C1 and C2. So Plan C1. I mean, I think Director Moore, you and Chair Nash can set agenda items separately. So I'm happy to defer to, between now and 4 weeks from now, if you two figure out the right one, I'm sure we'll, like, as you said, they all have to be done. So
Okay.
we'll just get started on that. So I think that's Plan C1.
Let's do that. We'll meet, and then we'll talk about the policies that still remain, and we'll pick one that's a warm up for the biggie.
Okay. And then Plan C2. So this is to add to the list. For transparency, Director Moore and I have had some conversations about this, and his suggestion was that I sound out the rest of the board, and I thought it was a good one. So I think the starting point is, as members of one of San Mateo's boards and commissions, right? We serve the city by working as one organization. That's one of the city's values. And in a recent boards and commissioner training, Mayor Rodriguez emphasized that one way we effectively do so is to stay within our swim lanes, right? And that's a quote. I didn't pick that analogy, but that was a quote from Mayor Rodriguez. However, in the now officially over 4 years since I've been on the board, it always seems we constantly have this fuzziness between like what is operations and what is policy. Right. So, and I think the specific example that came up recently was, James was Director Moore. And just in case everyone's wondering what's happening, in the training, they also emphasized we should be a little bit more formal. So I'm adjusting to match the city clerk's training, but I'm not quite getting it right. So I slip from time to time. But Director Moore said that, a gray area seemed to be like pilot programs, like whether they sort of have to fit with, once we're past the pandemic. So we're excluding emergency situations, but pilot programs, how much they have to stay within current policies. So this to me is kind of like a perfect example of like what exactly is the, swim lane divider between operations and policy. And I think it would be helpful to have that discussion. Otherwise, we're all kind of swimming in the same, one giant kiddie pool without the lap lanes. So I'd like to propose we talk about that, but definitely want to be open and hear what my fellow trustees think.
Liz?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's a good topic for maybe the next meeting to talk about that. I think that's a fair thing to talk about. I mean, I definitely think it's ambiguous. So maybe we could vote on that for an agenda topic.
And I guess I would love us to do a little bit of work on refining that a little bit more, because that could be, huge topic. If there's some way, maybe that we can think between now and then how to try and be more refined about that discussion.
Chair Nash, if I may.
Yeah.
I think it's a fair point about like structuring it. Like, I guess I see it as like there's a two-part question, right? The first part is, do pilots, it's kind of a binary question. You know, do pilots have to follow current policies or not, right? If they don't, then the whole thing is a bit moot. If they do, and you know, there's Director Moore's expressed like a desire for more flexibility, then the second part would be like, how do we provide more flexibility to have pilots, which I think are a good thing, right? I think innovation is good. Just kind of like, and then we can kind of like structure like, well, what are the different conditions? But I think the first question is really, you know, can we define, is there a swim lane to be defined? And that'll be the first question to tackle. And then we can separate the rest.
And you're talking specifically around pilots or?
Specifically around pilots. I think Director Moore's answered all questions that emergency measures are governed under a completely different framework. Those go through an emergency declaration, goes through the city manager and city council, and you know, we really don't have to worry so much about that. But
I mean, I would say my initial reaction is that's operations, and only if the pilot is adopted, then it becomes something we would worry about. I mean, that's just my initial take.
Yeah, so that would be a good discussion to have that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So as long as we can focus on the issue of pilots, and number one, is there something?
I found the policies, by the way, if you want to choose one.
You missed it, James.
Okay, we'll talk, you and I.
You missed it, yeah. So I think as long as we talk about number one, is there something to discuss? And then if there is something, what could the parameters be? Is that clear?
Yep.
Okay.
The discussion of policy and operations, it's fine for us to do, but when all is said and done, it's whatever the council wants it to be. And I think, to me, it can be very frustrating because I think we might have a great discussion and move in a certain direction. And the council said, you know, you guys don't have the power to do that.
Well, that's their prerogative. They're city council. We are advisors to city council, but.
May I weigh in?
Yes.
I think that, so I think that the fact that there's ambiguity around this, you're right, Don, it may turn out that, that the council says you don't have the power to do that. I don't know for sure. I would be concerned about the board attempting to have direct influence on how we do pilots. However, I don't know what the exact rule on it is. And so I think that the fact that at least one person is interested, that it's worth examining to get clarification on. And so even if you find out that you don't have that's not in your lane, or maybe you find out that is in your lane, it sounds like the need for clarification at this point is needed. So I support that.
Decide that, as Liz said, this is operations.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of different things. The point is, let's have that discussion.
Sure.
Okay.
Was Dr. Chen, was your original suggestion a way of, or a conversation to help us distinguish between policy? Yeah, that's what I thought. So it's more a conceptual discussion to help us in other things going forward. Is that right?
yes, that's right. There's no I certainly don't think, yeah, I mean, to me, yes, that's right. Like specific pilots, details of a pilot, that's all operations, right? It's just like, what is the line where like, it crosses into a policy, right? That's been, for 4 years, that has been fuzzy to me. I mean, not about pilots, but just in general. Sometimes like it's not, the operations policy line has always been fuzzy. But I take Trustee Hill's point that, perhaps the outcome of the discussion is really a series of questions that we could pose to our council liaison, Councilwoman Pappen. Right, so we don't have to make any decisions next time to avoid, what Trustee Hill said of, well, we'll decide something and then kind of get taken. What is the phrase?
Taken out to the woodshed?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, English is not my first language. Taken out to the woodshed by the council. So I move that we have a discussion next time to arrive at a series of concrete questions that we can ask for guidance from our liaison, Councilwoman Pappen.
I second.
Okay.
I'd like to make a comment before we vote. I'm not opposed to conversation. One thing I think would be very, very helpful is to have a clear example of a policy, a clear example of an operation, and then something that's not clearly one or the other that helps us really understand the differences that we are confronting. Because I think we could get lost in vagueness if we talk about policies that are layered with a little bit of operations and operations that are really grounded in policy. I don't know.
Who would be the best person to come up with those examples?
Socrates.
Well, as I believe Trustee Hill has a doctorate, he seems qualified. But I mean, perhaps that is a good suggestion for like homework. Like perhaps all of us could, or all of us who are interested, could come up with like, as Trustee Hill said, like, here's an example of what I think is clearly operations. Here's a clearly policy thing, and then here's a mushy middle. And if we see enough examples, that might that alone might sort of solve this question.
I think it could be a very interesting conversation.
Good. So anyone who has examples of policy versus operations versus mushy middle, why don't you get them to Dina for inclusion in advanced materials for the next meeting? Does that sound good? And then we can have the discussion. So
Sounds
that
good.
we had a chance to think about those prior to the meeting.
Sounds like a fine process, Chair Nash.
Thank you. Trustee Chen. Are there any other suggestions for topics for the next agenda? Don, is your hand raised, or was that from before?
Oh, it's gone.
Gone. Okay.
How do I get rid of my hand?
Well, just procedural question.
Yes.
Do we have to vote on the previous motion?
Yeah, I guess we do. Yeah. So Dina, would you take the vote? Roll call.
Okay, because we already had Dr. Chen motion and then Elizabeth DeWinter second. Okay, so Dr. Chen, what is your vote?
Aye.
Elizabeth DeWinter, what is your vote?
Aye.
And Lisa Diaz-Nash, what is your vote?
All right.
Don Hill, what is your vote?
Aye.
Rodlin Harris, what is your vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other topics to be added to the agenda for the next meeting? Is there anything else we need to discuss tonight? Okay, then at 7:44, I'm going to call the meeting adjourned and say thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone. Great to see you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.